December 2023, East Liverpool, Ohio. Once a hub of the pottery industry, the town is wrapped in anticipation of Christmas just a week away. On Shadyside Road stands the home of a large family, 33-year-old Christopher and 34-year-old Tiffany Morrison, their son and two daughters aged 10, 13, and 14, and Christopher's mother, Kay Morrison. On December 20th, this address suddenly becomes the focal point of a serious police inquiry. That morning, Randy Slager, a family acquaintance and longtime friend of Christopher's, walks into the Columbiana County Sheriff's Office. He's accompanied by his father, who insisted he contact law enforcement after a conversation with his son. Randy reports that 2 days earlier, on the evening of December 18th, he had been at the Shadyside Road residence and, according to his statement, witnessed the aftermath of a violent incident. Randy alleges that in the basement of the house, Christopher Morrison shot his wife, Tiffany, then, while brandishing a handgun, forced Randy to help conceal her body. Slager emphasizes that Morrison remained armed and was still inside the same house with his 3 children and elderly mother. In his account, he also claims that Christopher threatened to harm all family members if anyone alerted the authorities. Amid the town's preparations for the holiday, police launch an urgent review of this information and begin planning how to take into custody the man described by the witness as an immediate danger to others. December 20th, 6:10 p.m. In Ohio, darkness has already fallen. Officers stop Christopher Morrison's Jeep on a road in East Liverpool. The decision to detain him away from the house follows analysis of Randy Slager's statements and an assessment of potential risks to the family said to be inside the Shadyside Road residence. Morrison pulls over, follows officers' commands, steps out of the Jeep, places his hands on his head, and offers no resistance. During a cursory search, law enforcement finds a loaded pistol on his belt and a folding knife in one pocket. The presence of these weapons matches the description Slager provided in his morning report. After being taken into custody, Morrison is placed in a patrol vehicle and transported to the Liverpool Township Police Department. At the same time, another team of officers moves to the Shadyside Road address to check on the condition of the rest of the family and ensure their safety. At the home, officers make contact with Kay Morrison and the 3 children, who are in the living area. Kay tells police that Christopher left the house earlier that day and has not returned. Tiffany Morrison is not at the residence, and Kay cannot explain where her daughter-in-law might be. The children confirm that they haven't seen their mother since the evening of December 18th. While officers find no immediate signs of danger inside the living quarters, they describe the atmosphere in the home as tense and unsettling. Once Kay and the 3 teenagers are confirmed safe, investigators begin a thorough search of the property. Their main focus is the basement, the location Randy Slager identified as the possible scene of the crime. Forensic specialists quickly notice signs that the basement has been recently cleaned. The area around the shower stall appears freshly scrubbed, a sharp contrast to the otherwise dusty and cluttered utility room. Upon closer inspection, they find a small, round hole in the plastic panel of the shower. After partially dismantling the structure, a distorted bullet is recovered from behind the wall. On the basement floor, beneath layers of cleaning agents, investigators find a large, dark red stain. Near it, several empty rolls of large black trash bags are discovered. These combined indicators suggest that a gunshot was fired in the room and that an attempt was made to clean up the aftermath. However, Tiffany Morrison is still missing. With the initial search of the home complete, the investigative team expands their efforts to the backyard, where their attention turns to an outbuilding, a small shed now secured with a recently added padlock. After cutting the lock, they enter the shed. Inside are typical gardening tools and household items, but one object immediately stands out: a rolled-up carpet tightly wrapped in heavy-duty construction tarp and sealed with duct tape. Before touching anything, investigators document the position and condition of the bundle. Inside the tarp, they uncover 6 black trash bags. As the contents are examined, it becomes clear they contain human remains. Based on visible features and matching anatomical characteristics, the investigative team makes a preliminary identification. The remains are believed to be those of Tiffany Morrison. Final confirmation will come later through forensic examination. A review of the head shows a gunshot wound to the facial area. The damage to soft tissue, along with the shape of the previously recovered bullet, suggests the shot was fired at close range, likely from less than 3 feet away. This rules out the possibility of an accidental discharge. Further examination reveals that after passing, the body was dismembered. The nature of the cuts indicates the use of a mechanical cutting tool, most likely a handsaw. The separation marks confirm that the act was carried out in conditions inconsistent with industrial equipment or professional handling. All recovered fragments are collected and prepared for transport to undergo a full autopsy. When investigators compare the physical evidence with Randy Slager's statements, it becomes clear that the crime and the subsequent effort to conceal the body took place on the property before he ever went to law enforcement. On the evening of December 20th, Christopher is sitting in an interrogation room at the Liverpool Township Police Department. His demeanor is controlled and restrained. At the start of the interview, he confirms that his wife's name is Tiffany and admits that their marriage had recently been on the verge of divorce. Christopher then begins presenting his version of the events of the past day, attempting to explain his wife's disappearance. According to his account, the incident happened on the evening of December 19th. Christopher claims an argument broke out between them inside his Jeep. He says the dispute was triggered by Tiffany's intention to leave him for another man with whom she was allegedly involved romantically. He describes a confrontation on the road. While driving down a hill, he told his wife that he was not going to provide her with transportation so she could meet her lover. By his own words, he forced Tiffany out of the vehicle and left her standing in the snow. He specifies that he drove away after taking her keys, wallet, and cell phone. Christopher insists that he simply returned home, leaving Tiffany alone on the roadside in freezing conditions. He goes on to add details about their shared life, subtly shifting responsibility for the breakdown of the marriage onto Tiffany. He explains to detectives that the family had been living in Kay's house to save money. The plan, he says, was to eventually afford a larger home of their own, and living with his mother was part of that financial strategy. According to Christopher, Tiffany suddenly began demanding independence and looking for a place separate from him, something he interpreted as a betrayal of their shared goals. He mentions her side job at a factory in Pennsylvania as evidence that she was trying to distance herself from the family. In his statement, Christopher characterizes his wife's decision to leave just before Christmas as a selfish act toward their son and 2 daughters. As Christopher calmly describes this supposed roadside disappearance, detectives already know what was found at the house on Shadyside Road. He continues speaking about Tiffany as if she were still alive, claiming she might be staying with acquaintances. He says he expected her to come back, despite the fact that her cell phone had remained in his possession the entire time. This narrative of a voluntary departure following an argument on December 19th directly contradicts the evidence. Investigators have already determined that Tiffany stopped responding to messages on December 18th, and her remains have already been recovered from the shed. To understand how this family's story ended in a basement on Shadyside Road, investigators have to go back 16 years. Christopher and Tiffany began their relationship when they were both 18. They chose the same career path, completing training and obtaining licenses as massage therapists. Later, they opened their own business, a salon called Essential Needs, located in the nearby town of Kennedy, Pennsylvania. By 2013, Christopher and Tiffany were already raising 2 children. The couple officially married on March 21st of that year, while Tiffany was pregnant with their 3rd. Over the next decade, they tried to balance running a small business with raising a family of 5. In 2021, financial pressure forced the couple to make major changes. In an effort to save money and eventually afford a down payment on a larger home, Christopher and Tiffany, along with their 3 children, moved in with Christopher's parents. The move was framed as a long-term financial strategy. Living with Kay allowed her to help care for the kids while the couple focused on running their massage therapy business. Things shifted in 2022 when Christopher's father passed away. The responsibility of managing the household then fell entirely on Kay. Around that same time, the income from their business, Essential Needs, became increasingly unstable. The salon's earnings weren't always enough to support the 5 of them or to continue building toward the dream of homeownership. In the summer of 2023, Tiffany took a second job at a factory in Pennsylvania to help stabilize the family's finances. But this new source of income, separate from their shared business, marked a turning point. While Christopher pushed to keep saving and stay under his mother's roof, Tiffany started looking at rentals, exploring the possibility of living independently with the kids. She openly expressed a desire for financial autonomy, which clashed with the long-standing plan her husband had for building wealth together. By fall of 2023, their conversations about buying a future home had turned into arguments over Tiffany's right to live on her own, free from her husband's control. In January 2024, investigators returned to Kay Morrison for another round of questioning to piece together the timeline of events at the Shady Side Road home. Kay recalls the evening of Monday, December 18th, as the last time she saw Tiffany. Around 7 p.m., she says her daughter-in-law approached her in the living room near the Christmas tree. They had a brief conversation, and then Tiffany headed toward the bedroom. Kay notes that after that, she never saw Tiffany again in any shared areas of the home. She didn't hear her go outside or use any of the vehicles parked in the driveway. That night, Kay stayed in her room and didn't go down to the basement. She recalls that something about Christopher's behavior changed the next day, Tuesday, December 19th. He told her Tiffany wasn't feeling well and was resting and asked that no one disturb her. He also instructed both Kay and the kids not to go down to the basement, claiming he needed peace and quiet down there. Throughout the day, Kay noticed her son outside in the backyard several times. Christopher was burning paper waste in a metal container on the concrete patio, something she says was very unusual. That method of disposal had rarely, if ever, been used in their household before. Kay emphasizes that Tiffany never reappeared inside the house that entire Tuesday. She didn't come outside, didn't use any of the vehicles, and didn't interact with any family members. These observations became a crucial part of the investigation as detectives worked to reconstruct the timeline of events. As part of the case, investigators also reviewed Christopher Morrison's past, especially aspects that could help explain his behavior. Some of this information came directly from Kay Morrison's statements and was treated as subjective unless supported by additional evidence. According to Kay, Christopher struggled with managing aggression during his teenage years. She told investigators there were incidents at the time that required adult intervention and involvement from social services. Kay described episodes of what she called troubling behavior, which raised serious concerns within the family. She stated that Christopher had been enrolled in a specialized behavioral program as a teen aimed at helping him manage his impulses. While investigators couldn't verify the specific program or its effectiveness through official documentation, Kay insisted that her fear of his unpredictable outbursts had followed her for many years. Her testimony was entered into the case file not as confirmation of past wrongdoing, but rather to provide context, the emotional and psychological backdrop against which family dynamics had evolved, particularly the relationship between Christopher and his loved ones. To better understand the motive behind what occurred on Shady Side Road, investigators began examining Tiffany's connections outside the household. As previously mentioned, during the summer of 2023, she started working at a factory in Pennsylvania. It was there she met Jake Hill. According to Hill's statement, Tiffany initially kept their relationship platonic. She asked Jake to restrict access to his social media profiles so that no one in her circle, particularly Christopher, could see them. She feared being monitored. In conversations with Jake, Tiffany repeatedly described her husband as someone struggling with serious emotional and psychological issues. In November 2023, the nature of Tiffany and Jake Hill's communication shifted. What started as a friendship turned into a romantic relationship. In private messages, they discussed Christopher's behavior in detail. Jake referred to him as manipulative, claiming that Christopher deliberately created an environment where Tiffany felt powerless and dependent. These conversations began to change Tiffany's outlook. She started voicing her frustration more openly, challenging the financial control Christopher maintained and questioning the dynamic within their home. Things escalated quickly in mid-December, just 1 week before the basement incident. One of Tiffany's daughters came across messages on her phone that were clearly from Jake. At that point, hiding the affair was no longer an option. That same day, a seemingly minor domestic issue sparked a confrontation. Christopher lashed out over a bowl of soup, calling it inedible and too greasy. After that, Tiffany made a bold move. She left. She went to Pennsylvania to stay with Jake, where she remained for the next 5 days. In Newcastle, she and Jake began discussing plans to rent a place of their own and file for divorce. Despite her determination, Tiffany continued keeping in touch with her son and daughters. Ultimately, it was a call from her daughter, asking if they could spend the evening watching a movie together, that convinced Tiffany to return to East Liverpool on Sunday, December 17th. But by December 16th, the family conflict had already spilled far beyond the walls of the Shady Side Road home. That day, Jake Hill, under the influence of alcohol, sent Christopher private photos showing himself with Tiffany. Christopher responded with a flurry of calls and messages. Jake called him a clown and mocked his role as a provider. In return, Christopher threatened to confront Jake in person and warned that he'd be using the images in court during divorce proceedings. That same day, Christopher took a step that would pull his teenage son directly into the conflict. He forwarded the photos from Jake to the boy. Later, he would tell investigators this was his way of opening his son's eyes to what was really going on. That evening, Christopher sat down with his second son, who said he was angry at Tiffany for leaving the house. Christopher used those words to further turn the pressure up on his wife. On December 17th, Tiffany returns to East Liverpool after being away for 5 days. In the basement of the house, the couple has a long, tense conversation. The discussion centers on dividing property, future living arrangements, and custody of their son and daughters. Tiffany says she plans to rent her own place and insists on an equal schedule with the son and daughters. She confirms she's willing to keep working with Christopher at the massage studio and continue helping pay down their debts. Christopher pushes for family counseling and suggests alternative living arrangements that would, in his view, keep the situation under control. Tiffany rejects those proposals and reaffirms her decision to live separately. Voices are raised, emotions run high, and the atmosphere becomes increasingly charged. During the argument, Christopher pushes Tiffany. This moment is later acknowledged by Morrison himself. He claims that after she fell, he checked on her, worried she might be hurt, but says she told him she wasn't injured. Despite what happened, Tiffany does not back down from her decision to leave the house. After the confrontation, Christopher takes the keys to both vehicles, telling her he has no intention of making her exit easier. He insists that Jake Hill should come in person to pick her up. This exchange becomes the last recorded attempt to negotiate the terms of the separation before the events of the following day. To reconstruct the night of the crime, investigators return to the evening of Monday, December 18th. On the surface, the house on Shadyside Road appears calm. Around 7 p.m., Tiffany briefly speaks with Kay Morrison in the living room near the Christmas tree. After that short conversation, she heads toward the bedroom. She is not seen again in the shared areas of the home. Tiffany's digital activity continues until 6:50 p.m., when the last outgoing message is sent from her phone. All incoming notifications after that point remain unopened, allowing investigators to identify this moment as the likely beginning of the aggressive events. According to the reconstruction, later that evening, Tiffany goes down to the basement. Another conversation takes place between the spouses, though its exact content is unknown. During this encounter, Christopher uses a firearm. The shot is fired near the basement shower area, and the bullet strikes Tiffany in the face. The medical examiner would later determine that the muzzle of the handgun was less than 3 feet from Tiffany at the moment the shot was fired, ruling out any possibility of an accidental discharge. After his wife's death, Christopher takes deliberate steps to conceal what happened. Late that night, he contacts Randy Slager and asks him to come over, claiming it's urgent. When Randy arrives at the house, Kay and the son and daughters are already in their rooms upstairs. Christopher leads Randy down to the basement, where he points out the bullet hole in the plastic wall of the shower and then shows him a photo of Tiffany's body on his phone. According to Randy's statement, Christopher is holding a handgun and openly threatens to harm his mother and the son and daughters if Randy refuses to help or tries to contact authorities. Acting under that pressure, Randy agrees to assist. Tiffany's body is wrapped in construction tarp and a rolled carpet. Working together, the two men carry the bundle up the basement stairs, across the main floor, and out to a vehicle. Around 3 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday, December 19th, the body is moved into the shed in the backyard. Christopher secures the outbuilding with a newly installed padlock. After that, he begins building a narrative that Tiffany left on her own. Life inside the house continues outwardly as normal, while the son and daughters remain unaware of what happened in the basement, just a short distance from their living spaces. Tuesday, December 19th, unfolds on Shadyside Road like any ordinary day to those inside the home. The son and daughters focus on schoolwork and personal routines while Kay stays in the living areas. Christopher spends most of the day out of sight, explaining his absence as time spent taking care of household tasks. Investigators later determined that throughout that day, Christopher repeatedly went in and out of the shed in the backyard. According to the prosecution, this is where the dismemberment of Tiffany's body took place. Using a hand tool, Christopher separated the remains into several parts, placed them into black trash bags, and then once again wrapped everything in a carpet and heavy tarp. Later, Christopher posts a message on Facebook asking for help locating Jake Hill. The post remains publicly visible, even as it draws hostile and aggressive comments from other users. That afternoon, Christopher takes his son and daughters away from the house. During the drive, he records videos in which he asks them to talk about their feelings toward their mother. Investigators later view these recordings as an attempt to document the emotional state of the son and daughters at a time when Tiffany was already deceased. In December 2024, the case surrounding the crime against Tiffany Morrison moves into the trial phase. The defense builds its strategy around alleged procedural violations during Christopher Morrison's arrest and the search of the property. Christopher himself takes the stand, maintaining that he had no involvement in the crime and claiming he had no knowledge of his wife's fate until the remains were discovered. During cross-examination, prosecutors question him about his emotional state on the day he spoke with police. As the discussion turns to the discovery of the remains, Christopher acknowledges that he was aware the body in the shed had been dismembered. This admission directly contradicts his earlier claims of ignorance. That statement becomes a pivotal moment in the trial. The court concludes that Christopher had prior knowledge of how the body was concealed before investigators officially uncovered the evidence, confirming his direct involvement in the crime. On December 17, 2024, the court delivers a guilty verdict. Christopher Morrison is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Kay Morrison is formally granted guardianship of her 3 grandchildren. The legal process, which began with Randy Slager's statement to authorities, officially comes to an end.